Sometimes when I'm thinking about us, before we got lost and we parted, back to back we would carry on and we'd do anything for what we started. But this time we could break. I'm running dry, everything's the same. We'll try tonight. This time we're not safe and sound, not safe and sound. What if I'm no good for you? What if you're no good for me? Yeah. What if I'm no good for you? What if you're no good for me? Yeah. Sometimes when I'm reasoning about us, I know you got me, it's so effortless. Back to back we would carry on and we'd do anything for what we started. But this time we could break. I'm running dry, everything's the same. We'll try tonight. No, this time we're not safe and sound, not safe and sound. What if I'm no good for you? What if you're no good for me? Yeah. What if I'm no good for you? What if you're no good for me? Yeah. What if I'm no good for you? What if you're no good for me? Yeah. What if I'm no good for you? What if you're no good for me? What if I'm no good for you? What if you're no good for me? What if I'm no good for you? What if you're no good for me? What if I'm no good for you? What if you're no good for me? What if I'm no good for you? What if you're no good for me?
What's up, everybody? Welcome to the FPV News with JB and ItsBlunty and Henry. Henry's back there. Oh,
He just wanted to say hi.
oh. Well, I think the whole live stream is always glad to see him,
Yeah.
and glad to see you, Blunty. Not to take anything away from you. I mean, chat. Let's just start a straw poll here. Create a poll. Hang on a second. Who is cuter?
I hope that's not.
Blunty or Henry?
fair.
All right, we're just going to start a poll here, and we'll just see. We'll come back to that a little later. But for now,
I would vote him.
just, well, welcome to the stream, everybody. Oh, how are you doing, Blunty?
Good. How about you, Joshua?
I'm good. It's good to be back tonight. I always look forward to these streams where we get to go over the latest news in FPV to help people catch up on new and all the stuff. News. I don't know. I've gone off the rails there.
All the news.
All the
At
news.
least all the news that we feel is appropriate to review.
And that we
all
know
the news
about.
that we heard about. Yeah.
Right, that's the key. That's the key. Somewhere out there's a big FPV related news item, and we just didn't hear about it. And people are like, "Why did they choose not to cover that?"
And you know what? And it's your fault if you're listening to this because you didn't email news at fpvknowitall.com with that news.
Do you know, that makes me think, Bunty, this is not on the schedule for tonight, but there is a news item recently that people emailed us about so much. And we did, in fact, elect not to cover it. And while people are sort of trickling into the live stream, maybe I'll at least mention it. Do you know the one I'm talking about?
Yeah, I definitely know the one you're talking about.
The
Arizona drone.
The Arizona 100-mile-an-hour helicopter drone.
Yes.
So there was this police helicopter who reported that a drone of some kind like circled their helicopter repeatedly, flying over 100 miles an hour for, it was like, for 45 minutes or an hour or some ridiculous length of time. They chased this drone, and then they're like, people are like, oh, cover this. And I was like, the thing is, there's no evidence other than the pilot's report that this exists. And I'm not saying the pilots are lying. I'm just saying we know that pilots see weird shit in the air.
It's not even, I mean, we could go on about this, but there's the reasons it was not included, and including the fact of like, nobody actually saw anything. All they saw was a single LED light that they were chasing for like an hour across a city at 14,000 feet that was able to outrun them.
So there's two possibilities.
We don't have a UFO section.
Exactly. There's two possibilities here. One is that this was all imagined, or it didn't happen on some level, in which case there's no news to cover. And the other is that there is in fact some kind of an aircraft or drone that flew over 100 miles an hour at 14,000 feet for 50 miles. In which case it's not really on topic for our live stream, because it's not any kind of drone that we would even know anything about. So we were like, no, we're not covering this. Now we have.
This feels like one of the stories that you would read that would be UFO, like in the traditional sense, just like some unidentified object, but instead of saying that, they use the term drone.
Yeah.
That's a lot what it feels like. So.
Yeah, One IFPV says just because we don't understand it doesn't mean it didn't happen. And I think the chat is a little late, but that's why I said there's two possibilities. One is that it didn't happen, in which case there's no news there. And the other is that it is so far outside the realm of what we understand a drone to be that there's nothing really for us to talk about. So
a story like this is going to be more likely to be talked about if we have things like video and evidence and proof and more likely sources. And there's a lot of reasons why this wasn't covered. So
that's like the one example of a story that people have sent to us that we were just like, we're not going to cover this. Now we've talked about it. So, but what else are we going to talk about this week, Blunty? Stories that we do know about and think are important.
Yeah, this week we're going to give you a quick PSA about OpenTX. You better have your ADC filter off, and we'll explain why. There was a cool report on CNN for the average users for FPV drones, talking about some cinematic stuff. So we'll go over that report that they did. Redcat had their first earnings call. I talked a little bit about how do we listen to an earnings call. It turns out we found that, and they just had their first one. So we'll go over that. And was there a mention of FPV? I guess we'll review that.
But they revealed, as public companies are required to do, they revealed some interesting financial information about like who at Redcat is making money and how much are they making.
Yeah. Amazon and DHL are canceling their drone delivery plans. So we'll take a look at that and some updates on that stuff. KISS, there's a new flight controller in the KISS family, the Ultra FCFC, and we'll take a look at what that means and what that is. Velocidrone has their Freestyle pack out. We talked a little bit about their update that they did, and along with that, they've pushed a Freestyle pack, so we'll quickly review that.
Yeah, Velocidrone, well known as one of the best simulators for multi-GP style racing. That's not my opinion. That just is all the multi-GP racers I know practice in Velocidrone, so let's take that for what it's worth. Now, Freestyle in Velocidrone. Yeah. And the environments are pretty interesting.
Yeah. We've got a Reddit article from some guy who LIDAR scanned his yard and imported it into Liftoff. So that's a pretty neat little thing he did there. We've got an open source FC design that maybe needs your support. So we'll take a look at that, and then I'll maybe review some other open source FC designs that are available in the Betaflight GitHub. We'll take a look at some SRT file viewers that we talked a little bit about last week. You asked for a good SRT viewer, and we got definitely more than one.
Yeah, people really stepped up, and I felt it was important to cover it because last week I said, hey, will somebody make this utility? And then like 3 people made the utility for me to modify DJI SRT files, and then several other people sent me some that already existed that I didn't know about. So we're going to talk about that towards the end of the stream.
And last but not least, we've got a way to Superview your DJI video feed from your Air Unit or Vista on the fly through your browser with an app, website called WideFPV. So we'll take a look at that.
Awesome. Awesome. Before we get into the first topic of the week, let me thank you guys for being here. Let me thank you guys for being here in the chat. As always, we'll be keep you see you get the whole half of my screen, and also a big chunk of my screen is devoted to super chats, which you can access by hitting the $ right down here. Spend a couple bucks, throw a couple bucks in our hat, if you will, and then I'll read your message before the end of the stream. And in addition, we got to say thank you as well to these beautiful folks on my Discord server. These are my patrons. That's how you get on my Discord server. And they're all hanging out with each other, and I'm reading their messages too. So thank you guys so much for being here. Let's start, Blunty, with the first item from today, a little PSA and a video you made. Did you link to your own video?
No, no, this is Mark Spat's video from a while back.
Oh, because I know you made a video quickly, just be like, I'm just going to knock this out.
Oh, not for this. Nope.
No? Oh.
Nope.
Oh, well, I just am completely off base then. Anyway, carry on.
All right. So somebody posted in the beta flight group about this. This was an older thing that, Mark Spatz made this video back in May of 2020. But there's been a lot of people in the hobby since then, and I had totally forgotten this was the thing as well. OpenTX has a feature for the ADC filter, and basically it adds stepping to your outputs of the outputs, and that makes it so that it's stepped instead of a line, and that is better for I think servo motors, right, and push rods. Okay, I believe that's correct. So that's like typically on with OpenTX unless you turn it off. Builds like FreedomTX and EdgeTX have it automatically off. I mean, I don't even think you can turn it on in FreedomTX. But if you're using a build of OpenTX and you haven't turned it off, it's very possible it is still on. So that video talks about how to remove it.
Yeah, it's important because the rule, even if you don't give a crap about like what the ADC filter is, the bottom line is that for Betaflight, you want it off. You always want it off when working with Betaflight. And I checked this recently. Like I recently updated it. So I flashed my radio to EdgeTX, and then I flashed it back to OpenTX because I had a different tutorial to do with OpenTX. And when I flashed it to OpenTX 2.3.14 or whatever, that option got turned back on. And so we were talking about this, and I was like, oh, let me just double check. Oh crap, it's on again. So what I learned, I don't have my controller here handy, but if you look at the channel monitor, which shows your stick positions, if ADC filter is off, they're going to constantly just be going like, they're never going to sit there stationary, boom, at 1500 or whatever. And so if you look at your channel monitor on your radio and your channels aren't going, you probably need to go turn your ADC filter off. That's the takeaway for me.
Yeah, and so this came up actually because of, I think there was a bug. John Eska was actually talking about this. There was a bug at Race Day that they were dealing with, but basically there was a new build of Betaflight 4.3. They all flashed the nightly, and they were all having huge issues because it mattered a lot more about this hardware ADC filter. So that is now fixed, but it's a good reminder for everybody to turn that thing off.
Yeah, turn it off. Basically, you get double filtering if it's on. Betaflight is doing that filtering already, and so by having it also on in OpenTX, you're getting latency, et cetera, et cetera. So you don't want that. All right, good PSA there. And if you flashed OpenTX recently, go check because it might be turned back on again. Okay.
Yeah.
Next up, CNN has done a story about FPV drones, which it's great to see FPV going into the mainstream. They're talking here. The FPV drone pilots taking cameras where humans can't go. Got this video segment here and a little written story. We just wanted to shout. I think Blunty, you and I just wanted to, like, the article is like, okay, whatever. If you're in FPV, this article is not going to blow you away. But I think we just wanted to shout this out so people could like go just click on it and give them some traffic, so like they know that we're interested in this topic.
Yeah, it's actually the video there kind of basically just explains to someone who doesn't really know what FPV is through really cool footage, through really cool places, like what FPV is. And I think it's really good for, this is kind of a good thing to send to like maybe your relative or something that has never heard of FPV. Because it definitely shows the difference and kind of compares camera drones a little bit. It's a very light touch, but it's definitely a lot more than I would expect from somebody like CNN, and one of the first times I've seen it explained in the mainstream instead of just kind of being brushed off.
Yeah. Or let's face it, a horror story. Drones are coming to murder your grandmother. No, it's a positive story about drones. So share this wherever you think it'd be a good place to share. Anywhere you feel that drones need a little, or FPV needs a little positive press, and click the link and let CNN know that we are enjoying this. So. Blunty, before we go on, I do want to point out you have won the poll.
Oh, wow. Okay. That's surprising. Henry will be so sad.
Yeah. Fortunately, he doesn't speak human. 57 to 43, you won the poll. So you are cuter than your dog. I don't know. According to this stream, I'm going to end that poll now. We can get on with our life. All right, continuing on. Redcat did it. And by the way, kudos to you for taking the initiative on this. I really appreciate that. It was a throwaway comment when Redcat did one of their NASDAQ public offerings or whatever. We were like, well, shouldn't they have earnings calls? And we were all like, yeah, they should. And you actually went and found their earnings call. There's a link to it down in the video description, by the way. Link to all of our show notes, the videos, etc., everything we're talking about. Link down in the video description. But what interesting stuff was in the earnings call?
So there's a couple different things. One is like they kind of made a major statement in the earnings call here. So a little ways down, Jeffrey Thompson speaks, and basically he says, although I'm uplifted and excited and proud, although I'm excited and proud about what Redcat has accomplished over the last 4 quarters, I'm more excited about the next couple of years. We believe there are 2 significant catalysts that will grow our opportunity exponentially. Number 1, the infrastructure bill. So there are 617,000 bridges and 3.5 million miles of storm sewers. And you need to inspect it. So basically, they're talking here about what we've discussed a little bit, which is the Skypersonic drone box, this remote viewing platform for doing, these inspections and things like that. I mean, it seems like they're really targeting that in this in this call to investors. And then another thing they talk about is just that recent bipartisan legislation is still going to ban all Chinese drones from federal funds for 5 years. They're still pushing that. And with that, they're still doing that acquisition of Teal. That's still in the process, but that'll be another big step for them to have made in USA drones and be on that side of the market. One thing that's completely absent here is any talk of FPV video at all, digital video or analog at all, anything like that. We don't hear about any of those things. We just hear about like revenue and things like that. So we did get. Go ahead.
Yeah, go ahead.
I was just going to say, we also got a breakdown, though. They covered a little bit about revenue here, and I thought that was an interesting thing to note. Joseph Hernan, a little farther down, just says, we reported an approximately 10-fold increase in our revenues during fiscal 2021, increasing from $400,000 to almost $5 million. The revenue mix was 75% Fat Shark, 25% Rotor Riot. So that means extrapolating there, we have about $3.25 million in revenue from Fat Shark and about $1.25 million from a Rotor Riot.
So this is interesting because I have been wondering pretty much since I met Jeff Thompson years ago when he brought Rotor Riot out to Puerto Rico. I've been wondering, what is your product? How are you making money as a company? And I don't think there's been a good answer. And apparently they haven't been making much money as a company. But in 2021, they pulled $5 million. And interestingly, Rotor Riot, what was the number? Something?
It's basically 25% of 5 million from Rotor Riot, so that's about 1.25 million. 1.25 million from just the Rotor Riot revenue. Now these are gross revenue. We know these are not net revenue, but this is the idea of like what's pulling in, like how is the company is still generating money. So somebody is paying them for things, which still means that is a positive for the books.
I suspect a lot of keyboard warriors on Facebook and YouTube would be shocked to learn that Rotor Riot did 1.25 million in revenue last year.
Yeah. I
think that's a hell of a thing.
Yeah. And so they do mention that they did have a net loss of $13 million, but a lot of that is financing. They said they've spent only about $1.6 million, which isn't too bad. So they're pretty excited because we've talked about before, they did the IPO for $16 million and then they did an IPO for $40 million. So they've got about $56 million in revenue from IPOs. Yeah, it's an interesting little coverage here.
Yeah. So the big question it'll be interesting to see now that they've acquired Lugu Studios and Skypersonic and so forth, where they go from there. But I think, talking about bridge inspections and so forth. So there's this bridge in Tennessee, near Memphis, Tennessee, right on the Tennessee, Arkansas. I think it's Arkansas, the Arkansas border. And this bridge, one of the main sort of beams of the bridge just sheared straight through. And some engineers were inspecting it and were like, oh, this is bad. And they shut the bridge down. Now the bridge is shut down. And they're like, well, how did this miss inspections, because it didn't happen that day. There's a lot of talk about how America's infrastructure is sort of, well, some people say it's crumbling, that there's sewage systems, bridges, all kinds of infrastructure stuff that is due for an inspection and needing to be updated and repaired. And the theory is that this infrastructure bill, which is trying to work its way through Congress, is going to help make a lot of that happen. If that did happen, we know that people are using drones to inspect this stuff a lot of the time. That doesn't just sound like marketing BS. It's just a question of whether they can actually get the contracts, of course.
Yeah, I think I don't know, from their setup, I'm not sure who else is in a position, but we also don't know who's been quiet about their abilities and what they have and that sort of thing.
Yeah. So it's very interesting. So we shall see. Of course, we'll stay on top of that and find out, as it develops. I think it's very interesting. I don't know if we're a little too Redcat centric here on the news, but especially because when Redcat first came out, they got a lot of skepticism, and they still do from some corners of the FPV community. But now they've bought up all these companies. They've raised a preposterous amount of money, and it's like, well, okay, what do you got? I'm really intrigued. I don't know of another company in the FPV space that has sort of made moves like this. So,
yeah, I think it's kind of a wait and see thing. We'll kind of have to see how it all washes out.
And we will.
Yeah.
Well, a thing that drones are not going to be used for, apparently. So they're going to be used for inspection and so forth. What they are not going to be used for, apparently, is package delivery.
Yes. They touched a little bit about this actually in the Redcat deal, that just drones it's not likely for them to do delivery in any time in the recent, the next few years. So they're not really targeting any of that. And then we have a couple stories here. So one is from Amazon. I linked a story that was from back in November about some layoffs. There were, dozens of layoffs at Amazon Prime Air. And then we got a new Wired article that was released. And that's pretty recent here. I'm just talking about that through their reporting, they've seen that over 100 people have been laid off since 2019 in the Prime Air division. And it does look like, that team is certainly heavily on the back burner. They haven't officially announced it closing, but it seems like a lot of those jobs that they were people were trained for, they were asked to train out of them. So They like trained overseas replacements and taught them how to do some of the piloting that they were doing, and then ended up losing their jobs there at the Prime Air division. And that kind of leads into the other story, which is that DHL has also been testing something they call the parcel copter. And it looks like DHL is also canceling that project based on their testing and results. And just like the efficiency and such just doesn't seem like it's there.
Well, and I have to say, I am not entirely surprised. You know, when I heard that Google or Amazon or DHL was going to do drone package delivery, I thought drones are really, you know, small aircraft are not very efficient, especially when you consider that you might be delivering a single package. Whereas, you know, when you have big trucks full of packages, you get a lot of efficiency from the fact that they're delivering many, many packages at a time. They can optimize the route. But with drones, you basically have one package and it flies to the destination and it delivers it. So, and then you have all these technical problems with like, how do you safely deliver a package? Do you land the drone and risk hitting a person or something on the ground? Do you find some way to like winch it down? And I thought, well, you know, hey, I'm the guy who said that digital HD was never going to happen. Haha. So maybe they're smarter than me and they'll figure it out. But it certainly seems like, they're probably still smarter than me. But it seems like they're like, not today. We're not going to figure it out.
Yeah, I think that it's going to be a while till we see some solution for this. But what we'll be seeing most likely is more like. Can you still hear me?
I can hear you, but I've lost your video from OBS Ninja.
For some reason, okay. I'll work on that.
Second. 1 second.
Good stuff.
Yeah, that's weird. I still have your audio. It must have been your camera got disconnected or something.
Yeah,
oh, there you are. There you are. Okay. You're back. Your phone went to sleep. Go ahead.
All right. So, but basically, it looks like for rural areas or areas without infrastructure is where we're going to see these deliveries for like maybe like emergency medical stuff, like we've seen testing for, and then just like any kind of remote, you know, vaccines or anything that needs to go out. That's like time sensitive and you can spend the extra money on, and that is worth having the drones there for. And there's not like a road to take it there. So
yeah, I mean, I don't think there's any doubt that there are specific cases where drone delivery makes sense, and we've seen examples of that of flying I don't know, wasn't there a case where they like delivered a replacement organ via drone, and they had to go over some area where there wasn't roads or go across the water.
I know they've done a lot of like vaccines and like stuff deliveries in the remote regions. So
yeah, so there are definitely applications for drones for very specialized, high priority cases where the cost basically is worth it. But even if you go to like a city, I apologize, my printer has decided now's a good time to do whatever it's doing. Even if you think about like a city where there's a high density of people, and you would think, okay, well maybe it would make sense. Even then, apparently it doesn't. So the big question, oh, you're gone again. Sorry about that.
No idea what's going on.
The big question that people asked is this going to mean that there's going to be a rollback of remote ID? Because the commercial interests, people saw them as something that was driving it. It's like Zach Cagely in the Discord says, wasn't drone delivery a big part of why the new FAA regulations came out? Now for nothing but to be a pain in the neck. So what do you think, Blunty? Pause on that while you try to get your camera back. Oh, there he is. Nope, now we don't have audio. I think he's restarting his OBS Ninja. Well, I'll continue while we try to get Blunty back. And my opinion on that is that the image that some people had of commercial interests driving remote ID has always been at least 50% misplaced. And I've said this before, that security entities like Department of Homeland Security and other law enforcement and security entities are very concerned about the potential use of hobby drones, not FPV drones specifically, because they're a very small percentage of drones that are flown, but concerned about things like Mavics and so forth being used to do bad things, shall we say. And even if the commercial aspect was completely removed, I think the security aspect would still be a strong driver. Let's see if Blunty has come back. He is back. Blunty? I still don't have audio from you, though, man. So I think that remote ID isn't going anywhere. There you are. You're there.
Okay.
Yeah, I think remote ID isn't going anywhere, especially because, that's just not the way federal regulations work. Once federal regulation gets passed, they're not going to just be like, never mind. So remote ID is not going anywhere.
I would just say also that I think Amazon thought this was going to happen. Like, I really don't think this was like, I don't think they were dumping money and had a bunch of people working in a prime air division for no reason. They were showing this tester footage 5-10 years ago. They've been showing the advancements that they want to make. They've been pushing these regulations. They've been in the meetings. I'm not totally convinced that they didn't know until they fired people that they weren't going to do this. So I think part of the regulation push was from drone deliveries, and now they're realizing that it's not feasible after enough testing and push and looking at how the regulations are going to end up, what they're going to be able to do, what the requirements of the drones would be, and they're like, this doesn't wash out correctly. Let's get out while we're ahead.
Yeah, Don Marin in the chat says they canned the delivery idea because they realized they would get the crap suit out of them when those 20 to 50 packages start crashing through people's roofs. I think the safety aspect probably is solvable. Yeah. But boy, it's challenging, and I just don't know if, you look at what Tesla's doing with self-driving cars, and they're putting, I assume it's billions of dollars into developing full self-driving cars, but the payoff is massive if and when they succeed. What's the payoff for developing a delivery drone that can safely fly over people, can detect when a problem's going to happen, do an emergency landing potentially safely, and then deliver a package and not get freaking hijacked? What's the payoff? And then people are like, I need my Amazon Prime packages for free the afternoon of. Nobody's going to pay $100 to have a package delivered to them by drone. There's no payoff. Maybe that's the way they thought about it.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, all right, well, worth saying, Amazon and DHL aren't the only players out there. There still could be other companies trying to do this, but for the time being, some of the big players have backed away. All right. Before we go on, Blunty, let me get a couple of super chats out of the way that have come in. Jackalope FPV, thank you for a $5 super chat. Are you concerned that Redcat's current assets are not great enough to cover their current liabilities, according to their 4/30/21 balance sheet? I am not, in large part because I have no financial knowledge about analyzing balance sheets. So I am neither concerned nor unconcerned. I'm agnostic and ignorant. How about you, Blunty? What do you think of that?
Sounds about right.
Sounds like Jackalope FPV has an opinion that Redcat's assets are not great enough to cover their liabilities. I guess the question I would ask in response to that is that if you, what are their liabilities? If they raised $50-60 million, if they have liabilities, then the fact that they just did this giant IPO and they have tens of millions of dollars, shouldn't they be able to pay down their liabilities? I don't know.
Yeah, I have no idea.
Me neither. So thank you for the $5 super chat, Jackalope. We don't know that. We're not finance experts. I'm sure that Redcat would say, no, it's fine. Everything's fine. Don't listen to that guy. So, Dominic Douglas, thank you for a 20-pound super chat for beer. And Ken Piper, thanks for $2. He's back with the $2 spam again, so thank you that. Jackalope FPV continues. Their April balance sheet is scary, but yes, hopefully next quarter will be better and capture that. That's the thing that's weird to me about finance and business is a company can be in a terrible position and somehow keep raising money and not go out of business. And then eventually they either go out of business or they get a lot of money and then they become successful. And you just I don't know how you know which of those things are going to happen. I sure don't. Anyway.
Well, that's why it's not guaranteed investment.
Right. I'm an index fund investor. That's me. Yeah.
Got to believe in the product.
What's that?
Got to believe in the product. It's the whole, you gotta, you're buying into the product and you're like believing in the vision, that's the whole idea.
And then you're guaranteed to make money?
Well, no, but you're guaranteed to
feel good. When you lose money, you could be like, well, I really believed in this product and I just wanted to.
Yeah. At least you were somewhat informed. Hopefully.
Yeah. How's their stock doing? What's their stock? How's their stock doing? Let's just check in on the Redcat stock before we continue. Hang on a second. It's let's see. Let's go back. How about 6 months? Oh, there's a big spike there when they acquired Teal, and they're back down again. It's not great. It's sort of stabilized around 3. I guess it could be worse. All right. What's up next, Blunty?
All right. So up next, we've got the KISS FCFC, the Ultra KISS FC. So this is a new H7 FC from Alexander Fedorov. You might know Fedorov for having a specific Patreon branch of the KISS firmware that you could use if you sign up to his Patreon. And he does his own dev work and stuff. And now he is releasing the FCFC, which is the Federer Commander flight controller for KISS. This is the new hype flight controller. No clue when anybody will get it. There's been one batch made. It was like a small run. I think he'll be selling that to Patreons, and then it'll go from there. But notably, this actually has an OSD. It's a graphical OSD based on the H7, so it's not like an OSD chip. But it's basically full graphical OSD.
That's fine. That's cool.
Yeah. So just a couple other random, little things. We've actually got BL Heli pass through is built in, so you don't have to worry about that.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah,
there have been two main things that have been just an absolute deal breaker for me when it comes to KISS. And one is the lack of an OSD on the flight controller. And the other is that you basically have to use KISS ESCs because you can't do BL Heli pass-through and configuring and flashing BL Heli ESCs. And it sounds like he has taken those right on the nose.
Yeah, this is kind of seems like the edge of stuff, So this will have Crossfire V3 support. This will have Ghost support. No soft serial ports like the way it's designed. It'll have 7 exposed serial ports. Analog camera control, just a lot of different things here. You still get your D-Shot 2400 in one wire, but it does up to 8 motors on that for the KISS fans. They'll be excited about that. Just a lot of different things here, and you'll be on the new Fedora Commander branch, the Ultimate KISS Ultimate, or KISS Ultra. Sorry.
The big question is, when can you buy it? And it sounds like he's doing the initial batch through his Patreon. Yeah. So if you're not one of his patrons, and probably it's already sold out, right?
Yeah, I'm not sure that he's put it up yet, but I'm sure it'll be sold out in about 10 seconds. I've seen a lot of people asking for this. So he said that he has more sent out to be made, but he doesn't know how long it's going to take. Hopefully sourcing will be fairly quick, but I don't know that I would expect to be able to get one of these super soon. But I'm sure as soon as he can, Federer will have these available. So.
Yeah, the big question then is how many can you get and how in stock will they be? One of the other challenges with KISS hardware is, I mean, I guess there's FetTech as well, but if you buy them and you build them and you can't get spares, then that also is a challenge. But the hardware and specs for this thing are amazing, and the introductory price of €60 is given. I just it's time for us to do another order of my flight controller, and I'm not going to tell you the number, but I found out how much our cost to make it has basically doubled.
Yeah.
And then, of course, the retail price won't stay the same, and we're sort of figuring out what we're going to do about that. But suffice it to say, a flight controller at a price of $60, he is barely making anything on that.
Yeah, he actually mentions that specifically black box is not on here because of cost. So I think there were a couple little things that were, he's like, we could have done black box, but just buy a logger because, there's that extra cost for every controller that most people won't need. So, it looks like he's trying to get it cheaper at €60. That's a pretty impressive price. Hopefully that'll come out like that. Those will actually be available for people to buy. And yeah, that's pretty exciting. I did link one other thing. It's just I think I linked it in the show notes there.
Mm-hmm. Ultra OSD walkthrough.
Just a link to the OSD so you can get an idea. So he's got a web-based GUI here. So there's a website you'll be able to go to now. You'll go through Web Serial to configure your KISS controller if you'd like. And if you skip forward a little bit, you'll see the new OSD. So the OSD is a graphical OSD based on H7. But what that means is basically you're getting a live mirror pixel for pixel, like what you're seeing in
this is updating in real time.
It's exactly what you'll see when you look at the screen on your
that's slick.
on your goggle. So if you move to you'll see in just a minute there.
So you can do all of the menu stuff here in the configurator.
All the entire setup can all be done through the OSD or through the configurator, all that kind of stuff.
Isn't that Falco X's trick? Really?
Yes, very similar to that. Yeah, this is just kind of like running the gamut. Yes.
Mm-hmm. So with Falco X, you do all the configuration through the OSD, and there's basically a serial terminal, more or less, that shows the OSD on your computer screen. But Falco X doesn't have really a proper configurator GUI. Their thing is it's all done in the OSD menus. It looks like KISS is sort of trying to give you the best of both worlds, where you have a regular configurator GUI if you prefer to use it, but you can also do, we don't know how much of the configuration, whether it's all the configuration like Falco X.
Yeah, it's basically everything. He goes through most of the setups here.
Wow.
But you can basically set everything and then move everything, and it's very very configurable.
Wow.
And again, it's pixel for
really
pixel.
Slick.
So he can have all these fancy menus and layouts and all these things because it's just the H7 draw and everything.
Yeah.
So there's no restrictions, and it can look fancy. So
and that's exactly what you would see in the goggles.
Yes, exactly. Pixel for pixel, what you see in the goggles. There's also he does live motor testing with graphs and stuff that you can see in the goggles, and so a lot of neat things that you wouldn't expect. Just another layer there that comes with this.
That's very interesting. That's very compelling. I'm very tempted to at least try it out. Yeah. I mean, Dave in the chat says looks way nicer than Falco X. I mean, you can certainly ask
pixel OSD. So
yeah, that's it. Falco X is Falco X not graphical, is it? Is it character based?
Yeah, I think it's character based.
That's why. Still, a lot of good stuff here. Falco X, get on it. Where's your development?
H7s, we're going to keep seeing these H7s roll out with these graphical OSDs. So.
Well, that's the thing. Sometimes people ask, is there a benefit to going to an H7 today over an F7? And for the most part, I say no. There are very few flight controllers that, like the SP Racing series from Dominic Clifton, do some cool stuff with the audio-video processing capabilities of the H7. But for the most part, there isn't anything that Betaflight does that requires an H7. So you just get an F7. But as you start seeing stuff like this come out, then the argument for the H7 is going to get stronger. So yeah, really slick. All right, well, good for Alexander Fedorov over there in the KISS development. That is a really, really cool flight controller.
Yeah.
What about a really cool simulator? Velocidrone has a new Freestyle pack out. Blunty, I'm going to let you talk about it while I put this video up.
Yeah, so basically, Velocidrone has a new Freestyle pack. They've got, we commented a little bit about it, but we didn't have a good video or coverage of it, and it wasn't really released yet. But yeah, they've got basically, I think the main feature that a lot of people are going to be excited about, other than like new maps and stuff, is going to be chasing. So now they've added cars so you can like live chase in the sim. Mm-hmm. I think we're seeing the drift track. Yeah, the drift track scene here.
Yeah, let me fast forward slightly. We're getting a little too much setup here for our modern attention span. We got a car here. All right, let's go. Go do something. It's me watching every Freestyle video. Like, okay, we're 15 seconds in and you haven't done anything. Do something. Come on. There we go. Go ahead, Blunty.
Yeah, so I think this is super neat. There's some extra quads, some extra levels, some different features. There's a whole list on the Velocidrone website. When you go to purchase it, there's a list on the pack. You basically go in to add it if you've never bought add-on content for Velocidrone. You got to buy it on their website when you log in, and you'll see a list of those different things there. So,
what's fascinating about this to me is how similar it looks to. So this pilot who's flying, I can see the ways that they're struggling to frame the cars, to match the cars' speeds as the cars speed up and slow down. And it looks very realistic. The way that they're messing up is almost more realistic than if everything was going perfect. And it feels like this is actually a really effective way of, if you were going to go chase drift cars this weekend and you didn't want it, you'd never done it before, you could practice this and be like, oh, I see, I need a little more up tilt, or, here's what to do when the car gets away from me. It looks really cool.
So that pack is £5. And there's an island construction drift pack and Red Valley scene. So there's 4 new tracks, and they've added the Moon Goat, the Shocker, the Nazgul X5, the Roma F5, the Badger, Armatan Badger, the Lumineer QAVS, and the D-Rock.
We'll take another look at another one of their promotional videos. This is the construction scene. It's a big freestyle map. I got some woods. You can fly around the woods, but then there's also sort of a construction site. If you could stop doing juicy style long enough for me to see your beautiful map, that would be great. That was probably back at the beginning of the map where I would have complained that nothing was happening. Hey, you can't win. You can't make me happy.
Don't do anything until I want to.
This guy's doing Spang style out in the field. I can't see the damn map. Do something in the map. Great, you're a good pilot. There we go. Reminds me a lot of the demolition map from Liftoff, actually. So, anyway, like you said, Blunty, $5. People can go, if you've already got Velocidrone, it's a $5 thing. And, yeah, a lot of new stuff to play with. Very cool.
All right, moving on to another sim. We're going to look at a LIDAR scan into Liftoff. So I thought that was a pretty neat project.
Yeah.
A user here on Reddit, JandoDev, has made a LIDAR scan of his house. So basically, he ran his track a bunch of times that he set up in his yard, and then used LIDAR to scan that, and then used some custom code to make that pixel, like decide where to put the blocks here. And when I first looked at it, I was like, oh, this isn't quite right. But then actually you realize that, the trees just look different, but everything's actually pretty lined up about perfectly, and it matches pretty impressively.
Yeah, for those who, I just asked the Liftoff devs, okay, can you put my house in Liftoff? And they were like, sure. And, like 2 months later, they'd done it. So I don't know why everybody just doesn't do that. But I guess if you, don't want to go that route, you could build up a LIDAR scan, assuming you have a LIDAR. It's pretty freaking cool. Are the tools that he used to do this available, like, to the public?
So we linked the Reddit thread. I would just say go check out that Reddit thread. I think he put like a Discord and his YouTube in there, but he didn't like specifically talk about the tools. I think he is sharing those maybe in the Discord with people that are trying to get something to put together to share for a larger group of people to do this. So
yeah, I mean, there's LIDAR information. There's all kinds of LIDAR information out there from various things. It would be really cool to take pre-existing LIDAR scans and be able to import them, because I can tell you that there was a ton of manual work involved with building my house in Liftoff. Everybody's like, well, you just get the topo data and you're good to go. And no, it was so much manual work. Brian Lewis says he used an iPad, which iPad has LiDAR scanner, to scan it. That's interesting. So this is really interesting and a really clever thing done. Very glad to be able to draw some attention to it. Hang on, I'm going to sneeze here. Hold on. Nope, I was wrong. I thought it was, but
gotcha.
no. Hey, I want to get this question from Snoopy in the Discord before we go to the next story. Snoopy's going back to the price of the flight controllers and saying, any insights what specific parts caused the price to go up? Snoopy, I don't have the specific bill of materials broken out, but the bottom line is that everything, all electronic components, are between 2 and 5 times more expensive than they were a year ago. That goes for simple things like voltage regulators, complicated things like MCUs. I don't know whether it goes for things like resistors and capacitors, like down to that level, but just basically all electronics are 2 to 5 times more expensive than they used to be. That's the gist of it. So, and basically, if there's a product out there like a flight controller or an ESC or a video transmitter that hasn't doubled in price since last year, what it means is probably they just haven't run out yet and had to make more, right? So you look at the iFlight Nazgul. The iFlight Nazgul V2 is $210. The iFlight Nazgul Evoke is $300. They're not that different. The big reason the Evoke is more expensive is that components are more expensive these days. So right now you get a JBF7 for whatever it goes for, $60 or something. If once they sell out and we have to do another run, it will be more than that. So there you go. All right.
All right.
Continuing on. We got this. We got a story about an open source flight controller, Blunty, which I think is going to confuse some people because, like, Betaflight's open source. So what's an open source flight controller?
So open source flight controller is the hardware is open source. That means like basically, the whole layout and everything will be available for you to build based on the spec and bill of materials. Yeah, like totally open, so you can see exactly how it was laid out and diagrams and such. Yeah, board view schematics.
This intrigues me because once or twice a year, someone reaches out to me and says, hey, I want to design my own flight controller just because I'm a giant nerd. They don't say that part, but I hear it. And they're like, can you point me to any schematics? Like, how do you design a flight controller? And that's not, nobody publishes that information. So if only from an educational perspective, I think this is a really cool project.
Yeah, so the reason I linked this especially is because if you check out the second link there, brushlesswhoop.com, we have an article from Chris Landa. And so Chris Landa has said that, like, he thinks this is a great design. It's a super smart idea. And he's also basically saying, like, hey, why don't you help these guys out? So these guys are asking for the GoFundMe. They're trying to get to 3,000 so that they can get all this prototyping done, prove that it will work, and then get companies to make it. And then it'll be releasable and open, so it's proof that everything will work, but they want to be able to prototype it before they release all that stuff. However, Chris Landa has said basically that if this GoFundMe reaches 1,500, he will personally chip in for the rest. Mm-hmm. So basically, they only need about 960.
Yeah.
euros to get that.
I should say, whenever we mention a GoFundMe, I should say that we're not personally endorsing or promoting this. Well, I guess we technically are promoting it, but we're passing on the information about the GoFundMe, but you should do your own due diligence. We don't want to have another, never mind. Yeah, but this is a really cool project.
Yeah, so in that same vein, that caused me to think, like, okay, what else is available for open source flight controllers? So I got a link from Jai over at Express LRS, and he sent me this page. So Betaflight actually keeps a list of open source designs for flight controllers. The first one, the Phoenix F405, is actually Jai's design, but there's a bunch of different designs here that you can click through and check out, and actually get, specs and designs for flight controllers. Holy cow.
There's way more than I realized. Here's drone. Some people in the chat are mentioning Drone Mesh's project. Here it is. For several years now, people have been, like I said, once or twice a year, someone asks me, how do I make a flight controller? And I'm like, I don't know where to point you. And I did no idea this existed.
Yeah.
So you just take your pick.
Super neat little link here if you wanted to check out one that's already open source or work on it. So pretty cool.
All right. Well, that's pretty exciting if you want to make your own flight controller or just learn more about how this stuff is put together. Yeah. Shady in the chat is asking back about the ADC filter. ADC filter can not be turned off in Betaflight if you need it turned on. So that people were asking him if you have a fixed wing plane with servos, you can't turn the ADC filter off, can you, Blunty? You need it for servos.
I'm not a servo guy, so I don't actually know. I would assume that it's there so that you can run servos with it. But yeah, I'm not 100% sure. That being the case, if that is the case, then that means that both Freedom TX and Edge TX can't run servos. So I'm not sure if that's true or not. But
I mean, it'll still work. It'll just have a lot more noise in it and maybe a little jiggle.
I see.
But it might be nice if that ADC filter was a model-specific entry instead of a radio-specific entry. Shady, in theory, in Betaflight, you could do things like reduce the RC command filtering, but you wouldn't want to do that because it would create other problems. I don't think you would want to do that. I don't know what the answer is if you fly both multi-rotors and fixed wings. Have two controllers. There you go. That's the answer. There's no way to put ADC on a switch or anything like that. It's either on or it's off. That's just, I mean, OpenTX, I think the solution would be to make it a model specific or maybe a special function that overrides it within the model. So you could set it as on or off and then have individual models override it. I don't know. I think volume works that way. But for now, it's either on or off and you just have to decide. Ken Piper says, servos twitch a little bit if you turn ADC filter off, but it's nothing bad and I just deal with it. So there you go.
Okay.
Anyway. Alrighty. We have another set of open source projects. Blunty, yes, last week we covered a project from, I think it was Bushizi, that related to DJI subtitle files. DJI goggles record a subtitle file, an SRT file that contains basically like an OSD overlay. Unfortunately, not the Betaflight OSD, just the DJI info, but it can tell you things like latency and bit rate and battery voltage, and I use those when I make videos, for example. I put that stuff in there in Premiere. But the problem is that there's a whole bunch of extra information in there that I don't care about. And I said, can't somebody make a utility that will strip information out of the SRT file? Well, it turns out several people did. They just made it. And like the next day they were in my inbox like, hey, I made this thing. Do you want to? But also there were a couple of them that already existed. So I just want to give a little shout out and a thank you. I'm going to bring these up one by one. And people took the time to make these utilities. So the least I could do is give them a shout out. And if you are looking for a way to edit DJI SRT files, then here they are for you. Let's see if I can find one.
All these links are down in the show notes.
Correct.
So.
Do I have a Where? Oh, I don't even know if I. Uh-oh. Find an SRT. I was completely unprepared.
You have a
Where
default,
is that?
wherever that download spot is. Should have gotten one from me last week.
Yeah. Can I open file location? There we go. Now, what this one says to do, we're not going to do this for all of them, but I just want to try one out. We copy paste and paste it in and scan, and we can just go through and we can cut out the stuff we don't want. Flight time, UAV bat, GLS bat, bat cells. Let's just do delay and bit rate. Boom, convert, and boom, it just takes out the stuff we don't need. Very, very slick. Turns out, Oscar, here's Bushizi. Now, Bushizi, this is the tool we saw last week where you make a chart out of it. He also made this SRT filter. Here's GitHub from Aaron Lee. Oscar Leong actually has one. Didn't know that. Already existed. And here's one from Crofton77. So thanks to everybody who did that, and I will use these in the future. But for now, I just want to give you guys a shout out and a thank you.
Yeah.
That's it.
Very cool.
One IFPV says, great, grep on a website. Yeah, I know. If you know how to use grep, if you know how to use regular expressions, then this is easy. And in fact, in the stream last week, somebody came up with a Notepad++. Hello, can I search and replace? They came up with a grep to do what I wanted. Great. Yeah, but lots of people don't know how to use grep, so just take it easy. All right.
All right. Last but not least, we have WideFPV.com. So we've covered a lot of different projects on the FPV at DigiView world, and through the same proof of concept process, we have WideFPV.com, developed by, let me make sure I'm saying this right. I believe it's Ben Canuck, something like that. Ben Winnuck. But yeah, he basically built this, this website. It's meant to do live Superview while you fly. So you can either watch and record live footage, and then change the aspect ratios to like 16:9 or 18:9, or you can also do, Superview. So then it'll do it live while you're watching. It's a pretty neat little tool.
Is this going to break my live stream? I don't want to do this. It's going to break my live stream or something. I don't want to accidentally script the live stream, but yeah, this is significant because Superview, in case you don't know, it's a clever way of turning 4:3 footage into widescreen 16:9 footage by stretching just the edges and leaving the center more or less untouched. And since most of us consume content in widescreen, but in the case of like the DJI FPV or an analog goggle, the content is usually recorded in 4:3. Well, I guess that's not true. DJI, many cameras you can set to 16:9. But the key thing is that if you have a camera with a 4:3 native sensor, when you go to 16:9, you just chop off the top and the bottom and you lose vertical field of view, which people don't like. So the ability to Superview something is pretty slick. And the ability of this is just, you could plug in your goggles with USB and Superview in real time while you're like streaming with a video capture. And that's really amazing.
Yeah, pretty cool stuff. Pretty cool stuff.
So if you would like a tool to make Superview out of DJI or any other 4:3 footage, you can, or live out of a capture device, this is cool. And just another cool thing that the DJI Digital Out project has given us without those guys.
Single little proof of concept magic bit thing. We've got a whole bunch of solutions. So pretty cool.
Yeah. There you go. That's it. That brings us to the end of the news for this week.
Yes.
All of the news that's worth hearing.
All of it. Every last bit.
Mm-hmm. License to Drive is here promoting his rectilinear 16:9 from 4:3. He's got some videos about that up on his channel. One IFPV wants to know, if you make it into Superview, does it throw away info from the original image? I mean, the point of Superview is that it stretches the sides without actually chopping off any part of the image. So it shouldn't do that. But yeah. Anyway, thank you guys for coming out. We will see you again next week at 6 p.m. Eastern Time on Tuesday. And if you have news that we need to know about, what should they do, Blunty?
Email news@fpvknowitall.com. That's the website. It's down. I've had a couple of people ask me because they don't remember what it is. You can pull up any stream and look right down at the bottom, because that's literally here the whole time. News@fpvknowitall.com. And then go down, subscribe to this channel, like this channel, comment on this and other videos to help the algorithm out, and we appreciate you being here.
Yeah, that's going to do it, folks. Thank you so much for coming out. Have a great night, everybody. Bye-bye.
Thanks a lot.
All righty, man.